Thank you very much, Thomas, about your intervention and your speech and your solidarity in all this long period for the people's lawyers of Turkey, and also in the period of the death fast resistance. It was really important, this solidarity and all the solidarity of the lawyers of ELDH. We are really now in our session. We have something so important now. Is last really minute sending about a voice record of a people's lawyer, Aytaç Ünsal. He sent it, he tried to record our people that they are in Turkey, his voice through prison. And we have this honor to hear the voice of Aytaç Ünsal and have intervention of him in our symposium. Aytaç Ünsal, it was the lawyer, is the lawyer there that it was in death fast resistance together with Ibrahim Tik. And it was the lawyer who was in his face, we take all this big victory of the political victory of the death fast resistance, and after the martyrdom of Ibrahim Tik in 238 of days of death fast in 27th of August in 2020. After this period, Aytaç continued the death fast resistance and he won the victory. And he went out of prison, and inside conspiracies get arrested again from fascism. And we have this honor to have his voice now sending. Prison also cut his voice when he make the phone call, and they stop him here, really. So we have this honor to have the people's lawyers, Aytaç Ünsal, for voice record from prison intervention. We want the host of the Zoom to give the voice to hear. Thank you very much.
İki hukuk olduğunu, katliam ve direnişte dünyada iki hukuk olduğunu çok net bir şekilde herkes görüyor yani.
Everybody is able to see that there are two different laws. On the one hand, there is the law of the Zionists and imperialists, and this law is about killing and torturing the children, and it is the same law that is prosecuting and punishing us. But on the other hand, there is the law of resistance against occupation, tortures, and it is the law of the Palestinian people, the law of the oppressed. The lawyers, in the face of this reality, cannot stand as mere witnesses. We are not witnesses. We are part of the people's law, and we are their biggest advocates, biggest defenders. That's why we are in prisons. That's why our profession is being terrorized. We are being gagged. Our letters are banned. Our books, our publications are banned. Some of our magazines have been seized just because they were older than 2 years. They're trying to destroy our memory. They are attacking us so that we will ignore the reality. It is just about having us accept that we are terrorists. They are trying to gag us, and we are doing what we know best. We are doing what must be done. It is our duty to do what has to be done. They are going to put a ban on our words in the courts but we are going to raise our voice louder than ever. This is the end of the communication.
Bir tarafta emperyalistlerin, Siyonistlerin hukuku var. Taşlarımıza tüm dillerde çevrilebilecek bir selamım var. Haklıyız
I have
kazanacağız.
a salute that can be translated in all the languages. We are righteous and we will win. We will continue to talk about this. We will continue to struggle for this. I believe I can feel you standing side by side with me, and I'm standing side by side with you in that conference room. We love you. They failed to hinder us. And I would like to extend my salutes to every single one of you. Thank you.
It's really our honor that we had this intervention. This is exactly the meaning of the symposium that now I try to speak from the prison to have a short intervention for this first international symposium in the memory and the honor for Emre Timtik and Turkish fascism tried to stop his voice. This is exactly, that way is the fight for the right to speak about the oppression of the people from the side of imperialism and collaborator states. This was honor for us. And we tell one more time that Aytaç Uzal was in the great death fast resistance together with the Timtik. In his face, we saw the face of the meaning to fight for the right of all the people, the meaning to fight with the comradeship as a revolutionary lawyer, as an internationalist revolutionary lawyer. This is also Aytaç Uzal and all the people's lawyers that they are fighting really for justice around the world. And we are really, really happy that we had this intervention, even that they cut them. It's not necessary. We continue the struggle of this. Also, that said, I love all our comrades, all my comrades, all my colleagues, all the people that they are here. And we also love him, and we continue the struggle all together, even if here in the prison. We will give the floor now to Yannis Rachiotis. Yannis is an anti-imperialist lawyer and also lawyer of member of Bar Association of Athens. So the floor to Yannis.
Καλημέρα. Να πούμε ένα ευχαριστώ στο Διεθνές Γραφείο Δικηγόρων του Λαού που πήρε αυτή την πολύ σημαντική πρωτοβουλία που μας έφερε κοντά. Σε αυτή την στιγμή που έχουν περάσει 3,5 χρόνια χωρίς την Εμπρού, από όταν χάθηκε η Εμπρού.
Now at this time, 3.5 years after we lost Ebru, when Aytaç almost lost his life, we heard his broken recorded from the prison. It was at the last minute that his life was saved in the hunger strike that he did together with Ebru, and many other colleagues, comrades, friends lost their lives at the same time, fighting for a fair trial. Many others are still in prison. Aytaç Uzal's wife is still in prison, Soljuk, a bright lawyer, Soljuk Kozakalci, a bright figure in Turkey, one of the leaders of the movements of people's lawyers in Turkey. She's in prison on fabricated accusations right now. All these people are struggling for a fair trial, something that sounds very simple. What do we mean by fair trial? We mean a very simple thing, some procedural guarantees for the trial. That is practically a reasonable proof of some accusation on the basis of some internationally accepted criteria. Fair trial means also a court that is not too vulnerable to political pressure, to government controls. Nobody, of course, believes that a court has no relation whatsoever with the government or with the state in which it works, but at least we expect the necessary distances so that there is some more or less independent justice. We don't even expect a full independence. And finally, an important part of fair trial is detention conditions that are not against the spirit, are not detrimental to the material and spiritual survival of the person in detention. These are the reasons. This is what we are fighting for. This is why Aitaç fought for and Mru lost her life for. This is why Aitaç is in prison. We can feel how tragic that struggle is with the hunger strike that leads to sacrifice, to losing one's life like Emru did. We can even partly feel how tragic it is based on our own experience here in Greece. We have Nikos Koufondinas, who is practically paralyzed in Greece after his hunger strike. Why did he do his hunger strike? He asked them not to keep being in prison, although he had finished, he has served his sentence. He wanted to be able to take leaves, furloughs, just like any other prisoner. These simple things. He is paralyzed today. He's in a wheelchair after his last hunger strike. Giotopoulos also. He's at an advanced age. He did a hunger strike in order for he and his fellow detainees to have a few square meters just to be able to walk, to have a court or a courtyard just to stretch their legs. The detention conditions is a part of a fair trial. Otherwise, a prisoner who is not in a good physical and mental condition in order to defend himself or herself, if he is destroyed in the prison, of course, we cannot talk about justice and fair trial. An unfair trial is not something that we should be proud of, and it's not only in Turkey or in Greece. Nowadays, we have Julian Assange, a person being killed, slowly killed in prison. If he has any human life within him, because the Americans and the British are slowly killing him. Also, we have Carlos Ramirez Sanchez in France. Over 20 years, he's rotting away in French prisons, and for almost 10 years he was in absolute isolation, and it was the European Court of Human Rights that said, this is okay, this is legal if we are talking about terrorists. We know the white prison cells in Germany, in Turkey. We know this crime in Guantanamo. All these have one common feature. There are prisoners everywhere in the world, but this kind of barbarian prisoner is characteristic of the neo-colonialist Western world of imperialism. Remember this. This cruelty toward people is everywhere, but this scientifically cruelty of slowly killing people is characteristic of these countries, and it's also our responsibility to the extent that we are part of the system. it's a question that everybody may have. Why for such a simple demand that is fair trial? Why are people losing their lives for this? If you see it if you see the big picture, it's not an important demand. So how can the Turkish state be in danger if it offered Ebru a fair trial? What would the Turkish state lose? Is it so important? The same in Greece. What would the Greek state lose if it offered the 17 November prisoners a few square meters for them to stretch their legs, to walk outside their prison cell? But what is important in practice, it's not as simple as it looks. What the important thing is the political tradition that is expressed by the hunger striker, not only the demand of a fair trial itself, but it's a tradition that you impersonate your history. And also the geopolitics of a given state plays a role where this hunger strike is taking place. To be more concrete about Turkey, because the Turkish case is important for all of us, for all people struggling for justice, for all people's movements. Why is the Turkish state so cruel toward hunger strikers? What are today's hunger strikers, these illegal militants? How are they perceived by the Turkish state? They are perceived as continuators of the big anti-imperialist struggles of the left in past decades until the 1990s. We should never forget the Turkish left's struggles for the independence of Turkey, that is, for Turkey to leave NATO, to close down the American military bases in Turkey. The Turkish left was always against the alliance with Israel. It was against the role of the policing role expected on Turkey by the American imperialists for Turkey to become a policeman in the Middle East. This is what the Turkish left was fighting against all these past decades in Turkey. There was a huge people's movement in Turkey, many bombs against embassies and consulates in America. There were American militaries that were executed in Turkey. This is what the Turkish state is taking into account right now when they are facing the hunger strikes. Maybe the movement for national independence was defeated. We should be honest about that. But still, they needed two coup d'etats in order to defeat this people's movement in Turkey, and also an attempt for a coup d'etat that was organized by the Obama regime and its collaborators that cost 200 lives. Even if such a movement is defeated, such a majestic movement, it still leaves a big legacy. In Turkey, all over the country, the entire country is against NATO and Americans. Even today, 75% of Turkish people says that is against NATO, is for Turkey leaving NATO. And this movement also influenced even a part of the Turkish elite. That's how the Turkish elite that we see in the last 25 years was formed. Some elite that did some steps of autonomy, of independence, had followed its own agenda for the area around Turkey, in Syria, Libya, Azerbaijan, and so on and so forth. Maybe we don't agree, of course, we don't agree with this agenda, but there was such such a way of thinking that created that even influenced the Turkish elites to think outside the guidelines given to them by the Americans. And there's something that we have to take into account, even here in Greece, something important about the limits that the Turkish elite has, that no matter how the Turkish elite moves, it's always in the general framework of the West, of Western politics, in the framework of NATO policies. Turkish entry into the NATO and participation in NATO was and still is the main choice, the pillar of the policy of the Turkish elite, even today. You cannot understand Turkish politics if you don't keep in mind always this aspect, that is NATO participation. People's movement, those militants that are today in prison, also left one other kind of legacy that I would like to highlight. It did not allow Turkey to become a member of the European Union. And this way, the Turkish industry was not destroyed, its market was not invaded by the EU. In 1980, Greece and Turkey had the same GDP. Today, Turkey has five times higher GDP than Greece. What is the difference here? That our economy was destroyed, our production was destroyed, our labor relations and so on, they were completely destroyed. Whereas in Turkey, the people's movement saved Turkey's financial economic independence, so they kept their productive basis, something that is not only important for industrialists, for the factories owners, but this is also important for the people, for the movement, because that's how we have a workers' class that can believe in itself, that can intervene, can solve problems when you have a strong workers class. You have a good basis for the changes in the future. In Greece, unfortunately, we had a much worse development than in Turkey. Of course, we are subservient to the same bosses like Turkey is, but under very bad conditions, worse conditions than in Turkey. We are subservient to the West. We are just the servants and the policemen of Americans in our little area. At least this is our ambition, because we cannot really take up any more important role. So we are members of the European Union, and this has destroyed our economy, and we are what we all know today. We're just waiters and real estate agents, nothing else. Dear comrades, we are all here jurists, lawyers from all over the world, and some other people are following us online. We're here to honor the memory of Ebru. And this symposium is taking part in a very negative situation for international law. The international law today has to fight in Palestine a neo-colonialist reality. What does international law means? International law is a convention, let's call it like this, regarding the minimum cohabitation rules of Western society. The contradiction here is Palestine, is what's happening today in Palestine. Today in Palestine, we see again the most brutal traditions of colonialism, all these crimes that the international law supposedly is fighting against, wants to avert. And all these crimes we see, like genocide and so on, we see taking part. Wars, crimes against humanity, attacks on civilians. Whatever we learned at university as students that the international law should fight against, all this is happening today in Palestine. Apart from this obvious attack against international law that we are witnessing today, we also live in a time of deformation of legal rules where neo-colonialists, the West, when they cannot even deform legal rules, they just cover them up with a barrage of communication of propaganda. What do we mean by deformation, by twisting of the international law rules? Today's massacre in Palestine is called Israel's self-defense. You see how the notion of self-defense of a state is deformed, is twisted. Self-defense is called the attacks on Iran to kill Iranian scientists in their own country, to put bombs in Iranian industries. This is called Israel's self-defense. Self-defense, that means of American imperialism stooge, that is Israel, in another country, in Iran, to send warships to block China's coastline. Is called right to free navigation. Now we're talking again about the war scenario in Taiwan, and they call it a right to free navigation. Free navigation by whom? By air carriers of the US, many thousands of miles away from the American coastline, but still they call it as a right. Our response to this challenge is called, to this attack, is called attack, that we are attacking. In 8 years, we have 15,000 Russians killed in Ukraine. There's a Nazi regime that was imposed, and when somebody reacts to that, European media they call it self-defense, when they don't have any other justification. For example, when they enter some hospital in the West Bank and they kill wounded people in their beds, when like we witnessed last week at Al Shifa hospital, they killed 400 people there, and then they they destroy one after the other all medical equipment, all medical provisions of the hospital, so that they could not operate, they cannot save lives, even when Israel stops killing. And when they left the hospital, they unburied people from the cemetery. They dug them out from their grave. Respect for dead people is what separates humans from animals. Invading armies never violate cemeteries and all these funeral customs. This is what Israel is doing right now. These are the values that they are fighting for, and when they cannot defend such values, there comes a deluge of propaganda to move the discussion somewhere else. That happened when the Iranian consulate was bombarded a few days ago in Damascus. This is completely unjustifiable. You cannot come up with some justifications for bombarding a consulate which is a foreign territory in the country where it is, like in Syria in this case. So what you do is there's a barrage of unrelated information coming from international news agencies. So to generalize, we have to see the big pictures. We have the demand of the West for a so-called rule-based order. What does it mean? That the world must be governed by rules. But what rules are we talking about? Rules that they set depending on their own case by case. There are not going to be permanent rules. So they don't say what are these rules. It's a case by case. And above of these rules are the United States, which call themselves the international community. When we hear the word international community, that means the United States. What does it mean? This new proposal of the West for so-called a rule-based order, what does it mean for international law? It means that the United Nations statutes do not have any value anymore. If there is one thing that we won in international law, is the statute of the United Nations. This is the nucleus. This is the core of international law. And right now, even at a legal level, they want to do away with this basis of international law, that is the chart or the statute, the chart of the United Nations. That's what they mean when they talk about a rule-based order. We have to defend the UN chart. So in order to do that, we need to defend the US in their wars that they are carrying out. There are two wars that the US is carrying out, and there's a third one, the one in the Sea of South China, is coming up. So in order to have a real rule-based order, is for the West to be defeated in these conflicts we are witnessing. They want the war, and they are carrying out the war, but they have to lose that war. 2 days ago, the British Minister of Defense visited the British troops in Poland. These days in Europe, we have the biggest military drill that ever took place in history. It's the biggest war games that took place in Europe since the Second World War. Thousands of militaries, and the British defense minister is there to monitor it. And he said, we are not anymore in a post-war period, we are in a pre-war period. How more clearer could he be? They have to lose. They have to be defeated. This is our duty, the duty of peoples right now. The second thing is, if we want to defend the chart of the UN, that is, having humane rules in international society, we need a multipolar world. The chart of the UN was designed for a multipolar world. It was a presupposition, it was a basis for it to exist. But after 1990, we had a unipolar world. This is why the international law is being trampled on right now, as we see. To have again a multipolar world in the world is what we need in order to humanize, let me put it this way, to humanize international relations and to have the necessary basis for a socialist perspective of the peoples. Because as you understand, if we have only occupied, subordinate peoples and countries, there's no point in talking about a socialist perspective. The right of societies to exist, to be independent, is the precondition for a victorious class struggle. Our Turkish comrades fought for an independent country that can determine its own future, so that Turkey is a whole in the international system. It deserves to be one because it's a big country. The same for Greece. We are not as big as Turkey. Of course, we cannot be compared to Turkey, but we need to seek such a perspective as a whole in the Balkans, together with countries like ours. Our future cannot be what the Greek elite said, we belong to the West. What happened after the civil war in Greece? So if we see from a historical perspective, our history, the perspective of a country like Greece should be to bundle together, to gang up with countries like it, with our neighbors. This is the future, the real future for Greece, and this perspective would be really a victory also for the hunger strikers in Turkey and all the struggles of the Greek people. Thank you very much.
We are really thank you, Yanis, about the speech and combine really this very importance about the genocide of the Palestinian people and all the attack of imperialism and Zionism and the murderous policies. And it was very great this mention about the right to the funerals and how they are attacking to the funerals of the Palestinians. And also, as an add to this, that he very right that said that even the bodies of the prisoners, the Palestinian prisoners that died inside the occupation prisons, they don't give to the families, and Zionist Israeli, they are selling their bodies. You know, if someone died from one reason, they are selling stomach, they are selling. This is unbelievable, great that it was mentioned. Something like even happening, the attacks in the funerals is something that happening in Turkey also, as we know very well, the fascism in Turkey attacked to the funeral of Ebru Timtik. They want to take her body, and the other lawyers went to take the body of Ebru, and this is very important that was mentioned. Okay, we give the floor to Junaida, the member of People's Lawyer International Office, and also comrade, a colleague of Ebru Timtik, and that he lives here in Greece. And after our first session will finish, and we will take a short break to go to the second session.